And our topic for today is your one-stop shop in building your own innovation ecosystem. And welcome, we have our beautiful Alps from the Swiss Alps here. The way we're going to structure the webinar today, we're going to look at a topic on democratization of innovation. Then we jump into something called the innovation practice. Once we look at the innovation practice piece, we give you a sneak peek into how our programs look like and what does that entire area look like. We share a few use cases that we have seen in the industry of how people have used these pieces. And then we pick up questions after that.
We have a real mission at the moment, right, at Strategyzer, and that's to enable different organizations to gain access to the best in-class innovation processes, right? So for sort of large corporations, we're in the business today of making sure the entirety of their organization has access to it. But for small organizations that haven't yet been able to benefit from it at scale, we're hoping to make it more accessible, right? So Alex, could you give us a little bit of context on the work we're doing there and why we think this is important?
So I'm going to talk a little bit about this idea of democratizing innovation and what we mean with that. So I'll start with the basics. You know, maybe some of you, well, probably many of you who join these webinars have already seen this. Innovation is going from an idea, which could be a product idea, could be a customer need, going from idea to business models, value propositions, just solutions. Once we found that, then we start to scale what we found, and it turns into a management problem, right? Now, this first part is pretty messy, and sometimes people think it's all about creativity, or it's all about the creative genius, or it's just, I need to find the right idea. That's all BS, because basically it's process and teams that work together to search and find these value propositions, business models, or solutions. So we underestimate the process part sometimes when we don't know innovation. Now, a lot of experienced practitioners here, some of you said you're experts, right? So you know what I'm talking about. But the big thing also to understand when it comes to large and small corporations is that these are two very different worlds. The management world of exploit, running a business, and the exploration world of finding solutions to, maybe a new business model, new value proposition, or new features. And of course, it's a spectrum, right? Product management may be somewhere in between all the way to the right, and business model innovation definitely very much to the left. But what we really want to do, and what we're trying to do at Strategyzer, and started with kind of the books we wrote, is to systematize and codify the exploration practice, or at least some of it. And I'll give you a bit of a hint of what can be codified and systematized and other things that can't. Now, we're domain experts. Like, we've been doing this forever with hundreds of companies. So we're really, really good at this. We also admit we're never going to be content matter experts or subject matter experts of pharma or food. So we can bring in this process into completely different domains, because turns out the fundamental challenges of innovation, of exploration, are exactly the same across different industries, and even very similar from large companies to smaller companies. And Akshay and Matthieu will actually show you some of the differences between what are the challenges for large companies when it comes to democratizing innovation, and what are the challenges for smaller ones. So now, just to frame it a little bit, when we talk exploration, we're talking about innovation culture, and we call it innovation culture readiness. What are the three things you need to master? Some of it can be easily codified, some of it not so much, right? So first one, leadership support. There's a couple of things in there. What we can already give is a couple of best practices. I'll just give you one that I always bring up when I evaluate a company, large or small, or when I do these kind of webinars. How much time does the CEO or the senior leadership team spend on innovation? Well, from our best practices, we see it should be 40%. Now, of course, we don't have the scientific research to kind of prove that today, but from the many, many projects we see, when there's no support, doesn't happen. So there are a couple of things there that you can maybe codify, but not maybe as much as we'll see in the innovation practice. Then we have organizational design. So there's some best practices around how you design the org chart to enable innovation. There's similarities across different organizations. Of course, it's going to be very different in a large company and a smaller company, but there are a couple of principles that we can codify. Now, the piece that we tackled most, coming kind of bottom up at Strategizer first with tools, and then the process of the books and the innovation kind of experiment libraries, is the innovation practice, where it's all about process and investing in projects that show evidence. And then ultimately, there's one thing is, can you actually kill projects to invest in those that should really succeed? This domain here is the one that we can really, really codify. And my personal conviction is nobody in a company should spend time on reinventing the wheel here, because this is what we do. We know how to do this. So we want to liberate your time so you can spend more time on this kind of stuff, or the subject matter expertise in the innovation process, right? Bringing in what's really important in the food industry and beverages and pharma, or whatever other industry you're in. Now, when we do talk Strategizer, we're going to focus on this today, the innovation practice and how we can systematize this. Today, we do a lot of this as advisory with large corporations, right? So here it would be governance with organizations, and here it's leadership education and coaching of senior leaders across organizations, so that the innovation practice can work. Because the innovation practice without the top-down support cannot work. Now, what do we mean with democratizing the innovation process or the innovation practice? I want to show you this graph. This is how we think about it, is when you have no experience and no guidance and no structure, you need extremely strong skills. So when I started on innovation, I didn't know anything. So I had to work really hard to figure it out. And I had to invent the whole process and the tools, and we came up with a business model canvas. So skill level needed to be extremely high. Now, over time, when you have more guidance, so the tools are there, the process is there, maybe even the slides, the less you actually need skills. So the more guidance we, as Strategizer, first in books and now with our tools and programs and platforms, the more guidance we can give you, the less you actually need to reinvent the wheel. And maybe, this is not where it's entirely true, you can focus your really high skills on where it really matters, coaching teams, right? But what we also see is it's much easier to spread innovation practices across a company, because not everybody has to be a Tendai Vicky, right? My colleague who's brilliant in doing this, extremely high skill level, but not everybody can be the Roger Federer of innovation, right? So if I make this concrete, it all started out with books, right? So providing those tools, highly tested tools that have stood the test of time. Business Model Canvas is used by millions, literally, of people. 80% of accelerators in the world use it. And with books, we give you some guidance, right? For $30 or so, you can learn. But that's still not enough. So what if you had all of the slides, you had the workshop structures, the run sheets? So we still do a lot of this for corporations, but we now packaged all of this in our program licenses, right? Because if we give you that guidance, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, you can customize it. Okay, what if we could do better? What if we gave you in that package e-learning videos where you don't have to train, you just click on a button and you get, us been doing this for ages, you get a preset process, you get preset workspaces if you do this in a digital space, and you get a coaching playbook. So we're trying to make all the secret sauce, everything we know, accessible. Because ultimately, we're not in business to do consulting. We want companies to be able to do this on their own, right? So we're kind of undermining or cannibalizing our whole service approach, because we want companies to become independent. But what if we didn't stop there? What if we went on and said, well, you get all of this in a dynamic portal. You can manage a cohort of teams across a large organization, or if you're in a smaller company, much easier for you to do as an all-round innovation leader, because you have to do every single role. What if you had a preset, experiment, and you didn't need to do all of this and reinvent the wheel, but we gave it all to you? What if you had portfolio management? What if there was decision support with AI? What if you had an experiment library or automatic presentations? You do the experimentation, the testing, all the data and the data objects are in the platform. You press a button, out comes a wonderful PowerPoint that will wow your leadership. Wouldn't that be great? Now, not all of this exists today, but a lot of it does. And that's going to be the role of Matthieu and Akshay to show you this is what we're trying to do. This is our philosophy to democratize innovation in large corporations by spreading it across the organization, and in smaller ones to make world-class stuff accessible without the McKinsey level fees. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Akshay and Matthieu to tell us a little bit about how this looks in reality in large and small companies.
So before we jump into practice, I think it's good for us to understand and come to a similar understanding of what innovation ecosystem really means. So the way we see innovation, a thriving innovation ecosystem, is three components. The first component is more explore than exploit. How do you move yourself into a more transformative innovation? How do you move into ideas which generate more transformative innovation, not just sustaining or efficiency, but more transformative? That's the first lever that we see. You move your lever to explore. That's the first sign of a thriving ecosystem. The second sign of a thriving ecosystem is project volume, that you need to run at least around 150 to 200 ideas per year, and of different shapes and sizes all across the organization. So that's a project volume, which again is a sign of a thriving innovation ecosystem. And the third is testing speed. How fast can you test? How fast can you learn? So fast-paced experimentations, not experimentation that go on for a very long time and where you don't learn, but very fast experimentation so that you don't build faster than you test. So you test, you learn, and then you build. That's the idea of a very strong, thriving ecosystem.
Thanks for that clarification around what an innovation ecosystem is, right? And obviously, as we know, as you know from your personal work, from Alex's discussion, obviously there's a part of that which is innovation practice. Now, what do we mean when we mean innovation practice? Well, I mean, the first component, and lucky for us, right, is a question of innovation tools, right? So in this case, I mean, we came up with the book, literally, but obviously to do the work, right, and to define how you're going to do the work, you're going to need tools, right? And so obviously those tools are things like the business model canvas and the lean startup canvas and all of these different tools that are very important to doing the work, right? Now, of course, there's also a question of process management. A lot of you said that you spent a lot of time working on designing the innovation process within your organization. As Alex said, we'll never be sort of industry experts between pharma and food and whatnot. But what we found is that actually the process of innovation is remarkably, or ought to be remarkably similar from industry to industry, right? And so when you do the innovation practice, this question of innovation practice, a lot of it should be standardized when it comes to this question of innovation management. Lastly, of course, innovation skills. Do your folks know how to use the business model canvas? Do they know, how to iterate, how to ideate? Obviously, people need to be upskilled, but spending a lot of time on that is kind of wasted, right? Because again, those skills transfer from one industry to the next, from one company to the next. And funnily enough, actually to the next slide, please. We've literally spent the last 20 years doing this with the biggest businesses in the world, right? And so what we've tried to do is to really take the guesswork out and structure a process for your teams, right? Where what we believe can be structured and repeatable, which is this question of innovation practice, has already been pre-structured, right? So actually we'll go in a little bit more detail about what we mean there. And if you have any questions later on, we'll be happy to answer.
Thanks, Matthieu. So on the concept of systematizing of innovation, what we have done is we have packaged decades of our experience into these ready-to-use workflows so that you can work on the results, and you focus on more on the leadership, buy-in, culture change, etc., and leave the practice to us in terms of these packaged modules that you get. When I say packaged modules, what is it? So it's basically you get these structured proven workflows. So what we're doing is our experience from all over the years have been packaged into these structured workflows, put into the self-coach programs. We have what we do is you get an access to a lot of innovation knowledge, the latest from thought leaders, from practice, from our experience with working with clients from various industries, a continuous flow of what's latest. The next thing is, how do you speed up experimentation? So we just saw a couple of messages saying, how do you really speed up experimentation? Testing is very difficult. So you have the entire experiment library, which really helps you gear up, set up, and structure your experiments in such a way that you can experiment really fast. You experiment fast, you learn fast. The next thing is a self-paced guide. So what we've done is systematize the way you can learn about what innovation is, how do you structure stuff, and how do you use the innovation platform and the programs that we have into that technology solution, so that you're all hands-on when you start using it. And the next part is resources. So as Alex said in his presentation, it's all about don't worry about the run sheets, the slides, the workshops, structures, the PDFs, etc. You don't need to worry about all those pieces. All of them have been nicely packaged into the resource package, which helps you focus on your work on working through innovation, coaching your teams, guiding your teams through the de-risking process, and leave all this part to us. And the last piece is support. So we also offer a dedicated program license kind of a support, which helps you manage your operations, in the sense that it helps you onboard, offboard, and structure your day-to-day processes. So in this scenario. So that is how these are the 6 different pieces of how we have systematized the piece on innovation practice. Matthieu?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Akshay. And I think you've done a remarkable job at sort of going through quickly what has taken us months to iterate and to create, right? And to create something that we think really resonates with people. I'm just going to go a little bit deeper on this question of experimentation. And obviously there have been some questions in the chat about experimentation. Obviously that's a scary and a challenging thing. And so it's also one of the components of these programs that we spend the most time on. Notably, for example, we've created a sequence of workflows to enable teams to run structured interviews in a way where you will feel like a professional interviewer within a few minutes of grappling with these workspaces, right? Because each activity is broken down in a bite-sized and digestible structure, and you have a complete run-through of how to run these interviews. What questions should you ask? When? Such that even if you've never done interviews, you'll probably run them as well as Akshay and I, who literally do this for a living, right? And so that's really what we wanted to do, right? We wanted to enable companies that haven't had the time, haven't had the opportunity, or frankly, the people within an organization that haven't had the opportunity to do these things and to benefit from these world-class methodologies to do just that, right? So now, Akshay, maybe you could show us what this actually looks like, right?
Yeah, a quick sneak peek into how the programs are really structured, and we can go into the depth of it, but due to the time that we have today, I'll just show you a few screen grabs of how the entire process looks like. So when you if you log on to the platform and you open an instance up, you basically land on a page where it gives you a project timeline, a program timeline, and a dashboard that helps you map all your milestones. Your milestones are then neatly mapped. To e-learning pieces, workshops, huddles, coach portals, everything all put together into the same page. So the timeline helps the team, you and your team, to go through a very neat, structured process with achieving milestones in the process, so that you know that you're progressing from one milestone to the other. It's not a big black box of 12 weeks, 15 weeks of doing work and activity and not knowing whether you're progressing. With that, you have e-learning, contextual e-learning. So the right set of skills, the right set of context is created in the entire team at the right time, so that everybody has the shared understanding, has a shared vocabulary for you to progress. Beyond that, you would have pieces like what Matthieu just spoke about, is structured workshops, is the sequence of steps that a team follows together to achieve an outcome in a specific time period. So that is how a workshop is actually structured. All of this is on a visual, is using visual elements, and so that it's visual at the top of it, but data backed at the back end of it. So beyond that, then you would have a lot of resources. So as team leads, as team members, as coaches, you would have access to, say, the experiment library, the different content pieces on the patterns, and how do you do assessing, how do you assess your business models, et cetera, et cetera. So you would have all the relevant pieces of extra information, guides, resources at your disposal, so that you can get world class at innovating. Beyond this, you would have pieces on data object. So data objects would, so as I said, this is visual at the front, but data backed at the back. So if you say I'm interviewing a few people, you basically are connecting the different pieces of evidence from different interviews, and then you can analyze all these pieces in a single view and single frame to say what was a pattern that I learned out of all this. So you would have such data capabilities. And also beyond that, you would have structured team huddles or team meets, so that it's a great artifact that you use for a systemic ceremony, so that you are world class at structuring your innovation process. Beyond that, you would have a business model based progress mapping, which helps you come back to the business model again and again, and not get stuck in the idea or one part of the idea about a customer or a value proposition or a channel, but then come back to the larger picture and keep seeing where you are, how are you progressing, because activity is not progress. So that's an overall sneak peek into the program. So Matthew, would you like, maybe if you want to take us through a few use cases?
Absolutely, absolutely. But before I do, let me sort of just ping on one question. Gentleman, Roger, posted a comment saying, but what we need is a structured way to do this, right? And you're absolutely correct. And then that's what we've tried to do, right? The way Akshay and I always talk about it when we do demos or when we talk with prospective clients is to say, if you have a transient team working on an idea, or even a dedicated team working on an idea, you might have some marketers, you might have some accountants, you might have some people from finance, and they'll all be wonderful and great at their jobs, but they've never launched a new business, right? They won't know about, they'll show up Monday morning full, super eager to work on an idea, but won't know, okay, now what? And what we've tried to do is to create a roadmap of e-learning, of milestones, of structured workflows to enable the teams when they show up Monday morning to know what they ought to do, right? And so now let me just run you through how different profiles that are present here, that are represented here today, but that happened in the real world, leverage this tool to their own benefit and to their own context, right? And so the first one we'll look at is an innovation leader in a large company, right? And so obviously some of you will relate to that situation, right? And there, the challenges are clear, right? You've got to upskill a large set of people. You've got to achieve scale relatively quickly, right? You can't be working with 2 or 3 people at the same time when you're a part of an organization of 10,000 people, right? So you've got to run these large cohorts and very quickly upscale. And there's always a risk of, will we have capacity? Do we even have enough coaches, right? And so there are all of these challenges that are bundled together. And this happened to one of our clients, right? And so the opportunity and the solution for us was to say, okay, we'll set up an internal accelerator within this company based on our innovation programs on our platform, right? We very quickly trained and upskilled their coaches at scale. And within a matter of weeks, we're able to run 5 teams with their coaches through our programs. Right? So what does that mean practically for them, right? It means that they were able to generate impact very quickly. They were able to make evidence-based decisions on those 5 teams. Actually, could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you so much. And they were able to run this program with their internal coaches, which obviously significantly lowers the price for them, right? Because they didn't need our help and they were independent very quickly in this process. Now, let's look quickly at another scenario, right? Where you've seen how this might have worked for a larger company. Now, let's look at the case of an innovation leader within an SME, right? In this case, the challenges were drastically different, right? Whereas in the large corporation, there was a top-down mandate for innovation with a clear budget and a clear need. The stakeholder we have in mind here was drastically different. He was trying to innovate in a company where, frankly, people were looking at him and saying, do we really need to do that, right? Is that even that important? And he needed to show them, guys, even though that's not what we do, with this playbook and with this support, we're able to very quickly become world-class at this, right? Because this was a company that said, we don't do things with half measure. Either we're going to be great at it or we won't do it, right? So what did they do? What was the solution that they got from this product? Well, they had training modules both for operators and for team members, which meant that even though their folks had received no trainings before, they were able to very quickly get going, very quickly start to behave like a world-class team, and they had the guidance on how to go through this process. Ultimately, that meant that they were able to test like a world-class team overnight. It was a step change in their ability to explore new business models without the need of consultant, which obviously kept the overhead very low. And they were able to generate evidence within a few weeks. Both of these scenarios are completely different in some ways, right? But both of these scenarios have a lot in common, right? People leveraged a solution that made them independent quite quickly, right? And which means it kept costs low, but also gave them the support they needed at the different time horizons and for different stakeholders in the way those stakeholders needed it, such that very quickly their teams could become world-class innovation teams and could behave like the teams of some of the biggest businesses in the world that we ourselves hold the hands on, right? So actually, there's a third case that we've seen emerge in recent weeks, isn't there?
Absolutely. So, as an independent coach, so one of our coaches in our ecosystem reached out to us and said that I'm facing a challenge. The challenge was that she wanted to deliver world-class sprints with a high-end client, but very low turnaround time. So she literally got the contract and she was like, I have two teams. They want to start testing. And I don't have time for creating decks and PowerPoints and engagement supports and all that stuff, and really needed a quick guidance on the coaches that were not familiar with this entire coaching. So what she did is we set it up with the innovation programs, the self-serve innovation programs, where two teams started working on two ideas just in 3 days. So she quickly started off, no time to market, so just quickly started off. Because of the self-serve program, what happened is she could enable people who were doing innovation for the first time, because the e-learning modules, they were quick and fast on it. All the materials were available at the push of a button, so all of them coming at the shared language. And it's not an overwhelming task. So it's not that you learn the entire e-learning at the same time. It's like you break it into contextual pieces and then you do stuff. So you learn about innovation 101, then you start your idea, then you learn about customer discovery, then you start doing your interviews, etc., etc. So you just learn the process at the right things at the right time so that you have a structured workflow of understanding. And also the structured workflows helped her and her team achieve a clear set of milestones during her journey. Like, do you have evidence on your value proposition? Do you have evidence on your customer? Do you have now evidence on your business model, etc., etc.? So various phases of her journey were mapped out, and she and her team were very easily able to map these pieces across and ensure that they're progressing. And with the impact was that they could, based on evidence, not on assumptions, not on things, no faff, no fluff, but on assumptions, by getting out of the building, by testing, could reiterate the business model again and again. So in 12 weeks, they went through 4 different versions of the business model, learned something, came back, changed aspects of the business model, went back out, again tested, came back in. That happened a couple of times, 4 times actually. After that, they had a great world-class evidence-based presentation to the project sponsor. And now she's now on the road of getting more contracts. She's getting more coaching teams. So she started off with 2, but now that program is now being expanded to around 20 teams. So what happens is she could display tangible evidence on how world evidence-based presentations work, and how new team members, even the people who are doing it for the first time, can run through this process in a very smooth manner. And all this happened in just 3 days after she winning the contract. So that was quick, fast, and easy. Matthieu, anything on your end there?
No, I think that was a wonderful job, but I'm reading a question that I'd love to answer. And so when you've sort of finish this example, I'd love to jump in. And first of all, thank you guys for your engagement during this session. And I'm eager to jump into the Q&A session to answer these questions, right?
Alex?
Yeah, I see, Nick is saying, oh, so first we get told you shouldn't design innovation processes just to get shown an innovation process package. And I'll tell you why, and I'm pretty kind of straightforward with this and candid, is because we today haven't seen any innovation team design better processes than we do. Not because we're smarter, it's just because we do it more. We've been doing this for a very long time with many teams. I can guarantee you what works today is the result of having done it so many times, having learned. So we're not showing this just because we want to sell. Yeah, we're a company, but we're showing this to you because you should not waste time on stuff you will not be able to do as well. And that sounds arrogant, but it's not. It's just because of the law of large numbers, right? So what we believe is we can offer something you shouldn't spend time on so that, and that's what a lot of our clients say, so that they can spend time on where they make the biggest difference.